Welcome to CC Writes. My name is CC Lefke, and today I am phoning it in. Sometimes writers get a little verbose. We love to fill our stories with pretty words and ideas. Run-on sentences run rampant in the kingdom of right. We're all guilty of it at some point in our careers. But there's one skill that all writers eventually learn that turn our lines from run-on fever dreams into a solid infrastructure upon which we can build our stories. We learn to be concise. And I would argue that one of the best ways to learn how to make your writing concise is through cell phone novels. In the 1990s in Japan, messaging people with pagers became popular among girls. They would write stories and message them to all their friends. Pagers had word restrictions though, so each chapter had to fit within a certain character limit, kind of like Twitter, only less hateful. Therefore, the early mobile novel that would later give way to cell phone novels had to be sent a chapter at a time, and each chapter had to fit within a limited amount of space. The similarities to the compact nature of Japanese literature made cell phone novels extremely popular. It took off not only in Japan, but all across Europe, Asia, Africa, and North America. And that's where I come in. When I was in college, I came across the very first American cell phone novel website, Text Novel. Text Novel is no longer online because of the difficulties they had in funding their site, but the community was fantastic and the writing was even better. I even wrote my own story for the site called Secret Girl Code, and to this day it is still the most popular story that I have ever penned. Although I lost the end of my story when the site folded, which is a bummer. Cell phone novels never became as popular in the United States as they were elsewhere, but I fell in love with the genre anyway. It's a style of writing that forces the novelist to really consider what words and ideas are most important. It is the literary realization of the phrase, waste not, want not. Minimalism at its finest. In a cell phone novel, each chapter consists of between 70 and 100 words. There is never more than 200 words in a chapter. Despite the intent of telling a story on a cell phone, text-speak and slang are never used. This means that you have to be very clear and concise to tell the story that you want to tell. I know that I tend to harp on being concise. In my series on how to write prose, I probably mentioned it about 30 million times, but I only nag because I care. If you're thinking, I could just write a regular chapter and then break it down into 100-word segments, then you're out of luck. No one would read your story. That's because for cell phone novels, each chapter loads separately. You have to think carefully about how you're going to lead your audience through each chapter because each one takes time to load. If you don't think of each segment as a self-contained entity, then you're going to lose the attention of your audience. Who wants to take time to load up an incomplete chapter? Not me. One of the qualities that results from writing this way is that the story becomes very focused and tender. Each part of the story feels like a held breath. Part of the beauty of it is what's left unsaid. And because only a brief moment can be shared in each chapter feels like a cliffhanger. Cell phone novels use fragments with a purpose, languish in simple sentences, and boil dialogue down to its most important parts. With all of these things in mind, the most difficult yet valuable part of a cell phone novel is learning how to cut back your work. When I wrote my cell phone novel back in the day, I languished over every single word and every single line, which is totally different from what I do now. Totally different. Like, not even the same at all. I learned a lot about how to edit my work, about which words in my sentences weren't necessary, and how not to feel too attached to the sentences that I fell in love with. I had to come to terms with the common mistakes that I made as a writer, which was a lot of mistakes. A lot. By the time I'd finished my cell phone novel, my writing had significantly improved. Because I'm not the sort of person who can just tell you about a thing without showing you how it's done, I'm going to write the first part of a cell phone novel right here and now. Keep in mind, I never write a story without planning. So I'm going to use a story idea that I've thought a lot about without ever writing it down. I call this one End of Everything. I sat on the floor in front of the couch. My hair was greasy. Dark circles ringed my eyes. I stared at the black and white chaos on the television screen. Some people say that TV static is a signal from the Big Bang. The Big Bang is the beginning and the end of everything. I slurp a lukewarm spoonful of my soggy cereal, staring at the beginning and the end. If it's the end, I wish it would just happen already. So this is my first segment. It's about 82 words. Very morose, just the way I like it. If I'm writing a 60,000 word novel, this segment represents about 0.1% of the story overall. At 82 words, I am well within the typical word limit for a cell phone novel, but let's tighten it up a bit. I sat on the floor by the couch, hair greasy, dark circles ringing dull eyes, watching black and white chaos on the TV. People say TV static is a signal from the Big Bang. The Big Bang is the beginning and end of everything. I slurp a lukewarm spoonful of soggy cereal, staring at the beginning and the end. If it's the end, I wish it would happen already. That brings my total word count down to 67. You'll notice that I rid my story of a lot of pronouns and possessive words. Throughout my time as a writer, I've learned that these words aren't as strictly necessary as we tend to think they are. I also typically get rid of the word just, even though I have a really bad habit of using it everywhere. In some places, I make my sentences more complex so that I can use less words overall. In the first paragraph, I turned two fragments into a parenthetical phrase. In the first paragraph, I changed the word staring to watching so that my later use of the word staring would appear more bleak in comparison. Because goodness do I love me some bleak sentences. The result of my editing is a little under the typical word count for a chapter, but this gives me some room to where I can work in a little bit more story. I can create a transition between this scene and the next, and by doing so, create a cliffhanger that will keep my audience reading. I sat on the floor, dark circles ringing dull eyes, watching black and white chaos on the TV. Static is a signal from the Big Bang. The Big Bang is the beginning and end of everything. I slurp a soggy spoonful of cereal, staring at the beginning and the end. If it's the end, I wish it would happen already. Aunt Jen rushed into the room, running late again. Our eyes met. She froze. Not going to school? No. You really should. No point. Static danced to the music of silence. You can't hide forever. I shrugged. Forever isn't that long anymore. I made a few more edits to the first part and added in an interaction between the main character and her aunt. With this interaction, I established that the main character is skipping school. I also indicate that there's some problem with the main character that causes her to hide away in her home. The last sentence deepens the mystery of what's going on with the main character. Forever isn't that long anymore. I had to get rid of a few sentences and phrases that I really liked to make this segment work. In the first sentence, I even had to prioritize one of the descriptions of the main character over the other. Farewell, my precious child. Despite the changes, the actual writing itself is a lot more streamlined and impactful as a whole. It sets up a problem that will motivate the audience to keep reading. After all of these changes, my current chapter sits at exactly 100 words. I highly recommend practicing cell phone novels because it will drastically change how you think about and write your stories. It seriously ramps up the impact of your prose, and you'll notice a huge difference in how your readers respond to your work. It may not be easy when you first start off. I ran a writing group with a few of my friends and I challenged them to write a cell phone novel. None of them ended up doing the assignment because it was too difficult. Rest assured, I'm not telling you to do this because it's easy. You should do it because it will make you a better writer. Speaking of being a better writer, if you'd like more lessons from me on how to improve your writing, click on the top video to check out my series on how to write prose. or you can click on the bottom video to see what YouTube recommends. As always, thank you so much for joining me today on CC Writes. I really hope you enjoyed our time together, and I will see you later.